continuing on the instructions and the prayers by Bhishmadev. We will continue our discussion from the 15th verse in the 9th chapter, 1st canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jaya Udire Ashtaprayeshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavate Uttam Shloke Bhaktir Bhavatir Naishtiki Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Bhutala Shiva. So in the previous set of verses, Bhishma Dev, he's been talking about the sufferings of Yudhishthir, the Pandavas, and Kunti Devi, and he's also trying to divine the reason for the sufferings. So first in verse 12 and 13, he acknowledges that yes, there has been terrible suffering inflicted upon the pious Pandavas and the faultless Kunti Devi. And then he says that, in my opinion, these are because you were destined to suffer. This is all due to inevitable time. And inevitable time in this case, so you'll see that he describes, when he talks about time from the perspective of destiny, he talks about time as inevitable. And when he talks about time from the perspective of Krishna, he talks about inconceivable time. So right now he's talking about inevitable time, that you suffered because you were destined to suffer. Now he is going to take it to the next level, that maybe the suffering was not because of their past karmic reactions, but there may be some other reasons for the suffering. So we will start from 1:9:15. Yatra dharma suto raja gadapanir vakrodaraha Krishnastrigandivam chapam surta Krishnastatat vipat. Oh, how wonderful is the influence of inevitable time. It is irreversible. Otherwise, how can there be reverses in the presence of King Yudhishthir, the son of the demigod controlling religion? Bhima, the great fighter with a club, the great bowman Arjun with his mighty weapon Gandiv, and above all the Lord, the direct well-wisher of the Pandavas. So as we said, that he had first spoke about the suffering of the Pandavas, linking it to destiny that is actuated by time. Now what he is saying is that it is not that aspect of time that actuates karmic reaction, but it is the inconceivable effect of time. So this, in effect, is the situation of practicing devotees, that they do not suffer really the effect of the karma, but they do suffer. And they do suffer because of the inconceivable effect of time, which is karma but handed out by Krishna. So it is Krishna. Sometimes it is called Krishna karma. So, so how is Bhishma coming to this conclusion that the Pandavas are not suffering because of their past karmas or because of their destiny? So he very poetically he is describing this auspicious confluence in which the Pandavas exist. So he says there is Dharmasutta Raja. Dharmasutta Raja, this is the king who is the son of Dharma, Yudhishthir. And then he says there is the Gadapani Vakrodra. So Vakrodra is Bhim and Gadapani is the holder of the club. So there is the mighty Bhima. So there is the pious Yudhishthir, there is the mighty Bhim, and then there is Krishna Astri Gandivam Chapam. And there is Krishna. Krishna in this case is Arjun, whose astra is Gandivam. The Gandivam Chapam is bow, whose weapon is the Gandivam bow. And then over and above that there is the Suharta. There is Krishna as their well-wisher. So Bhishma says that Yatra, how can there be any vipats? How can there be any reverses when all these auspicious factors have come together? There is Krishna as the well-wisher, there is piety, there is valor, there is strength. All of these are opulences that Krishna attributes to himself. So when Bhishma is describing them as a reflection in the Pandavas, so he's saying that undoubtedly they have the direct mercy and the indirect mercy of Krishna. So how can there be vipats? Lord Brahma in his prayers, he describes the material world as kadam kadam vipadam, where there are reverses at every step. But here Bhishma is saying that they cannot be. So he is refuting the proposition that he himself had placed in the previous verse that the suffering was due to destiny. And Srila Prabhupada in the purport says, despite the power of pious acts, the power of personality, the power of expert management, and the power of weapons, under the direct supervision of Lord Krishna, the Pandavas suffered so many practical reverses. So how do we understand this? So we understand this, that this is the result of the inconceivable effect of time. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that it appears that without a cause, time has produced effects that look similar to karma. So we must try and infer its cause. So why does Vishwanath Chakravarti say without a cause? Because if the Pandavas were impious, they would not have Krishna as their well-wisher. If Bhima was impious, he would not be the greatest of the mace carrier. If Arjun was impious, he would not be the greatest of the bowmen. And if Yudhishthir was impious, he would not be the personification of dharma. So he's saying now we can conclude that there is no impiety. So what could it be there? So Prabhupada then explains, which can only be explained as the influence of Kal, inevitable time. Kal is identical with the Lord himself, and therefore the influence of Kal indicates the inexplicable wish of the Lord himself. There is nothing to be lamented when a matter is beyond the control of any human beings. So what Prabhupada is saying that now this is a different manifestation of time. This is the inexplicable wish of Krishna. So here we see that distinction between karma and Krishna karma. Karma that is handed out by destiny is the inevitable aspect of time. You do good things will happen. You do impious things, bad things will happen. That is inevitable. But here what we are seeing is the inexplicable desire of Krishna. So in this verse, Bhishma has brought the Pandavas to the next level. That the suffering that they are experiencing is of the because of the desire of Krishna. That there was suffering that was due to them, but Krishna, he interfered. He did something, and what you got out of it is the inexplicable desire of Krishna. Then, as we discussed, this is the situation for sadhakas, for practicing devotees who experience suffering, and may or may not be because of the prarabdhas. Some of it is probably because of prarabdha, some of it is because of Krishna's desire, which is why he calls it inconceivable. Okay, we'll move on to the next verse. 1916. Nahi asya karchidrajan puman veda viditsitam yad vijigyasaya yukta moyanti kavayapihi. O king, no one can know the plan of Lord Shri Krishna. Even though great philosophers inquire exhaustively, they are bewildered. So Bhishma Dev says, Api he. He means certainly. That it's not that the Kaviyas, the great philosophers, are sometimes muyanti, that they are sometimes bewildered. But he says that the plans of Krishna are so difficult to discern that whoever tries to do so will definitely be bewildered. So no one can understand the plan of Krishna, let alone interfere with it. So if you don't understand, how can you interfere with it? But, so this is one of those cases of stating a point with certainty and then putting a but after it. So even though no one can understand the plan of Krishna, one still needs to inquire into it. And then we'll see that what comes out of that inquiry. Sridhar Swami, when he comments on this verse, he says that the Bhishma is saying, Nayasya Nahaya Asya Karchit Rajan. So, which means that certainly never, Asya means his. His Karchit is whatsoever. So, his refers to Krishna. So, Sridhar Swami brings attention to the fact that Bhishma at this point, he has raised his finger and is pointing to Krishna. That his plans, that person standing on the chariot next to you, and this is relevant because later on Bhishma will say that that person is. So Prabhupada in the purport says that Bhishma wanted to impress upon Maharaj Yudhishthira that since time immemorial, no one, including such demigods as Shiva and Brahma, could ascertain the real plan of the Lord. So what can we understand about it? It is useless also to inquire about it. Even the exhaustive philosophical inquiries of sages cannot ascertain the plan of the Lord. The best policy is simply to abide by the orders of the Lord without argument. So Prabhupada is looking a little bit ahead. This point will be made by Bhishma in the subsequent verses. Right now he's laying down the foundation for that point. That you cannot understand Krishna's plan, therefore you cannot interfere with it. So what is the best thing to do? Is to follow through with it. Prabhupada says without argument. But still, one needs to inquire. If not, then all this discussion would not be happening. The acharyas would not be writing commentaries. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that accepting that Krishna is inconceivable is easy. That you say, okay, Krishna Krishna is God, we cannot understand him, fine. But accepting the inconceivability of his actions is difficult. When he performs something, then we need to understand. Why did Krishna do this or why did he not do this? So there the distinction comes. Because many times when we have these discussions, then devotees saying why, and then if you keep saying Krishna is God, he can do anything, then you will see that the other person is losing faith. Why? Because it is difficult to accept the inconceivability of the actions. You start off the discussion by saying Krishna is God, he can do everything. They'll say, yes, I accept it. And then you say that Krishna allowed Abhimanyu to be killed. And they'll say, why? And say, because Krishna is God. And they'll say, come on, bhai, give me some more understanding. And then they will say that, he'll say that Krishna stood by until the last moment when Draupadi was being destroyed. Why? Because Krishna is God. No, give me some more understanding. So in this context, Sripad Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that we need to inquire that does he want to give the Pandavas suffering or joy or both? It cannot be the first, so which means that Krishna cannot give suffering to the Pandavas because he is affectionate to his devotees. It cannot be the second, which is joy, because we see that the Pandavas were suffering a lot. So obviously Krishna was not giving them joy. It cannot be the third because it violates the first and the second. That if Krishna sometimes gave suffering and sometimes gave joy, then it violates the fact that Krishna is affectionate, and the joy violates the fact that the Pandavas were experiencing misery. So then what is it? And in a way, this is Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur is leading us. It's to some extent circular. So he says, so at the end of this inquiry, we should conclude what was the premise of this inquiry, that Krishna is inconceivable. So he says, so the point that he's making is that we may try and inquire, but that inquiry itself will lead us back to the same conclusion, that Krishna is inconceivable. And he uses the Pandavas as an example. That one may inquire that what is the reason of Krishna's, what was the reason that Krishna was interacting with the Pandavas the way he did? Was he giving them joy? No. Was he giving them suffering? He should not. Was he giving them both joy and suffering? No. Then how do we understand it? So we understand it that it is not possible to understand Krishna's action. So then the recommended way is that one has to accept that Krishna is beyond logic, but at the same time follow his instructions. So in this case, so generally our faith in following the instructions of somebody increases when we begin to understand the person. So if a person just, at the work environment, we're always told that don't tell people just do something. Explain to them why you are asking them to do that. Because then they can see your thought process, they can see where you're coming from, why you're asking them to do. They develop faith in you, and then they develop faith in your instructions. But here, it is almost the opposite. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur and Srila Prabhupada is saying that you develop faith in the fact that you can never understand Krishna. And because of that, your faith in following his instructions should be absolute. So don't try to question, but simply follow. So as I said earlier, Bhishma is a Mahajan, and he's accomplishing a lot in his instructions and prayers. So So Bhishma is kind of bringing his line of reasoning to some kind of a conclusion. He began with acknowledging that the suffering of the Pandavas and Kunti Devi was there. So he does not negate that. He says, yes, you suffered. And then he said, you suffered because of prarabdha karma, because of your destiny. Then he says, but you are pious. You're full of auspicious qualities. You have Krishna as your well-wisher. So that means you could not have had prarabdha karma. So it was because of the inconceivable time, which is basically Krishna helping you in his own way. Now he makes the final linkage and explicitly states that it is only because of the desire of Krishna. There is nothing else. So this is the third level of understanding behind the cause of suffering. So I'll go over it again. First is the suffering is because of the result of past karma. And this is what is experienced by the materialist. The second is because of the inconceivable effect of time or the desire of Krishna. This is what is experienced by sadhakas or aspiring devotees. Third is the suffering is orchestrated by Krishna himself. It has nothing to do with the devotees. It has nothing to do with the desires, nothing to do with the past karma. Krishna is orchestrating that suffering. And this is referring to pure devotees, where Krishna just uses them for his own purpose. So Bhishma, he has taken the Pandavas to the three levels. And ultimately what he is saying is that your suffering, and in a way he's glorifying them. He's saying your suffering are there because you are pure devotees of Krishna, and Krishna has used you for his own pastimes. So Prabhupada in the purport says, the suffering of the Pandavas were never due to their past deeds. The Lord had to execute the plan of establishing the kingdom of virtue, and therefore his own devotees suffered temporarily in order to establish the conquest of virtue. Bhishma Deva was certainly satisfied by seeing the triumph of virtue, and he was glad to see King Yudhishthira on the throne, although he himself fought against him. So Bhishma also uses this line of reasoning to excuse himself. So he's saying that just like you were all a plan of Krishna, I was also a plan of Krishna. I fought against you. I did not do anything while there was injustice being done. So that is suffering for me. But again, just like you were suffering because of the plan of Krishna, even I was suffering because of the plan of Krishna. And Prabhupada in the purport he elaborates that he says, even a great fighter like Bhishma could not win in the battle of Kurukshetra because the Lord wanted to show that vice cannot conquer virtue, regardless of who tries to execute it. Bhishma Deva was a great devotee of the Lord, but he chose to fight against the Pandavas by the will of the Lord, because the Lord wanted to show that a fighter like Bhishma cannot win on the wrong side. So I also want, so this ends this section of Bhishma Dev's speech, which is the suffering of the Pandavas. And I just wanted to distill some of the other points that are more subtle in it. We've talked about them, but I just want to summarize them. So Bhishma is saying that the Pandavas should forgive him, Bhishma Dev, because he himself was being used by the Lord. Then he's looking at Arjuna and saying that you should not consider yourself as my killer. I was killed by Krishna to show that even somebody as valiant as me cannot win on the wrong side. These are the points that were summarized by Srila Prabhupada. So Yudhishthir may ask, surely there could have been a less painful way for Krishna to accomplish all this. And Bhishma says, and Bhishma is himself lying mortally wounded on a bed of arrows. And he says that Krishna is inconceivable, difficult to understand what is done by Krishna, why. So this is one of the questions that comes, that why did Krishna choose to do this? Why did he have Bhishma, who was a great devotee, perforated by arrows, sitting in so much of pain, putting Arjun into so much of pain? And he says the actions of Krishna is inconceivable. So this is a segue into his future guidance, that all you have to conceive is what Krishna wants you to do and follow through. So this addresses Yudhishthir's concern about indecision. So one of the reasons he comments is that I do not know what I should do, and Bhishma is saying is, don't worry about not knowing. Perfection for you is to follow through with determination what Krishna wants you to do. Okay, since this is a slightly complex verse, I'll take a break here and see if there's any questions or comments.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Haribo.
One question, you mentioned that for the sadhakas, the level of suffering would be inconceivable effect of time or the desire of Krishna, which are equivalent, I mean to say. And third reason is Krishna is orchestrating suffering in the life of devotees. Desire of Krishna and orchestrating the suffering, how they are different?
So there is a slight difference between the two, because for the mixed devotees, they still have prarabdha karma. So the reason it is inconceivable is that Krishna, so there is the cycle of karma that's going on, and Krishna is constantly interfering with it. So the results of the karma are not what they are supposed to be. And he's doing that to purify the devotees. Now his purified devotees, they don't need any more purification. They don't have any karma to begin with, and they don't need any purification. So Krishna is not interfering with the cycle of karma, but he's simply using them. He just says, I want to use you for this pastime. So this is what will happen to you.
Okay. So it means that for the sadhakas, it is for the benefit of sadhakas, Krishna is interfering with their karma. But
for the benefit both ways, that he's benevolent to them. So sometimes he will reduce the reactions of the karma, but he also wants to purify them. So sometimes he might exaggerate the effect of their karma. That is why it becomes inconceivable.
Yeah, but still ultimately it is only for the benefit of sadhaka.
Ultimately it's for the benefit of the devotee. Yes.
But for pure devotees, he will just use for his own plan.
Right, and the benefit is always there. So wherever there is Krishna, the benefit is there, right? So they are benefiting because they're getting an opportunity to serve Krishna in his leelas, but different kind of benefit. Okay, if there are no other questions, I can proceed.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. One question. How to see what we said is about all we have to conceive is what Krishna wants us to do and proceed towards the Krishna karma. So how to vision that, like what Krishna wants us to do? What are the ways we can look for?
So thank you. It's a practical question. Different ways. Krishna is not very shy about telling us what he wants to do, what he wants us to do. He says in the Bhagavad Gita, he says in the Bhagavatam, um, in the Association of Devotees. Same Acharya whose commentary I was referring to, Chakravarti Thakur, in the um, in the in the in the Guru Ashtakam, the last verse is Yasha Prasada Bhagavad Prasadam. Not the last verse. Yeah, the last verse. Yasya Prasada Bhagavad Prasadam. And the point that there he makes is that what your Guru is asking you to do is what Krishna is asking you to do. And this is a point that Prabhupada made very often when he was asked this question, that how do you divine the will of Krishna? How do you understand what is it that Krishna is asking you to do? And the answer is that what your Guru is asking you to do.
Thank you.
Okay.
And Prabhuji, for sadhakas, Krishna karma is the term used for sadhaka devotees only, right, Prabhuji?
It is. Now, Krishna karma is not really a Vedic or it's not a Sanskrit term. This is a term that devotees started generally using for this situation. I think it's more of an ISKCON term. So instead of calling it, so it's not prarabdha karma, it's not lila. With his pure devotees, it's lila. With materialists, it is prarabdha karma. So they kind of combined the two and they said it's Krishna karma. Okay, so 1917. Tasmadidam devatantaram vyavasya bharatarshavaha tasyanuvihita nathapahi praja prabhu. O best among the descendants of Bharat, Yudhishthir, I maintain therefore that all this is within the plan of the Lord. Accepting the inconceivable plan of the Lord, you must follow it. You are now the appointed administrative head, and my Lord, you should now take care of these subjects who are now rendered helpless. So this is the point that Srila Prabhupada he pulls into the purport of the previous verse. But this is a point that Bhishma Dev makes now, that you can't understand Krishna's plan, but what you can do is that you can follow it. You can accept it. You can also accept the fact that it is inconceivable, but you must follow it. And what is the plan that Bhishma is saying to Yudhishthira that Krishna has for you? He is saying that you must now take care of the subjects who have been rendered helpless. So, in response to the previous verse, a person might say that everything will happen by Krishna's will. So I don't really have to do anything. If Krishna wants me to become a devotee, then he will make all the arrangements. He will inspire me from within, and I will become a devotee. If he does not want me to become a devotee, I will not. I was once having a discussion with a friend of mine in India on this subject, and he was almost verbatim, he was quoting the sentiment. He was saying that the fact that I'm not able to take to bhakti means that Krishna does not want me to take to bhakti. Whenever he's ready for me to take to bhakti, I'm sure I will take to bhakti. So he was shifting the entire burden on Krishna. Now I don't think he was philosophically following through the but Yudhishthira Bhishma wants to make sure that Yudhishthira does not become fatalistic, but actively follow the will of Krishna. So that is why right after this, He's saying that he's encouraging Yudhishthir to be active. That you become the you become the so look at how he is addressing him. He's saying that where's the Sanskrit? I'm not able. Okay, I'll when I come across it, it's somewhere in the verse. So this is the reason that earlier on Bhishma had introduced the term Vipradharma Achyuta Ashraha. That in all your actions, you be guided by Vipra, the Brahmans, Dharma, principles of religion, and Krishna. So if Yudhishthir was to, at this point, become passive, then he would be violating that instruction also. Because Krishna is asking him to rule the kingdom, the Brahmanas are asking him to rule the kingdom, and as a Kshatriya, it is his responsibility to rule the kingdom. Srila Prabhupada, in a lecture, he makes another point over here that the Pandavas or Yudhishthir might ask, and this again goes back to conceiving the inconceivable, that if Krishna wanted me to rule, then he could have wiped the Kauravas out and just given me the kingdom, and I could have ruled. And again, even though we keep saying that inconceivable, we still try to give some answer to it. So Srila Prabhupada, in a lecture, he tries to explain this with his famous analogy of mother-in-law, daughter-in-law. That when the son is newly married, the daughter-in-law comes to the house, but she does not know enough about the house, what are the right things to do. The mother-in-law does not have a close relationship with the daughter-in-law, and she does not want to jeopardize it. So if she keeps correcting her or scolding her, then that relationship will get broken. So what does the mother do? She starts chastising her daughter. That the daughter-in-law cuts some vegetable in a wrong way, she comes and she scolds the daughter. This is no way to cut the vegetable. This is the way you should cut the vegetable. Let me show you how to cut the vegetable. And the daughter-in-law, she's observing and she's okay, I made a mistake. So Krishna uses his pure devotees in this way, that he puts them in trials and tribulations so that when the others who are not pure devotees see that, they get an understanding of what is the expected actions. Similarly, when Krishna chastises his pure devotees, then the others, they get this understanding that this is an action that will be punished. We see that in the case of Bhishma. Bhishma is a pure devotee of Krishna, but we see him lying on a bed of arrows, about to give up his life. And the message is that despite whatever progress you have, if you're not on the side of virtue, you will be punished. So ultimately, Bhishma is saying that you should accept this as the plan of Krishna. So at this point, Bhishma, these are the glorification that I was looking for. At this point, Bhishma is glorifying Yudhishthir. He says, "You're Bharatarshava." Bharatarshava is that you are the foremost of the Bharat dynasty. Who else was this term Bharatarshava used for? In the Bhagavad Gita?
Arjun.
Arjun, yes. So Krishna, often he would call Arjun as Bharatarshava. So here Bhishma is calling Yudhishthira Bharatarshava. And then he says you should become a Nath and Nath. So you should become the protector of the unprotected. So with all the Kuru Vansha, the Kauravas destroyed, the vast praja is now unprotected. So he says, now you should become the unprotected. And he says, Pahi praja prabhu, Pahi praja, that you should protect. Prabhu is, you should become their Lord. And Lord not in a way of lording over them, but Lord in a way that they should be able to take shelter of you. So Bhishma is saying all this to indicate to Yudhishthir that you are qualified to do this. These are the plans of Krishna. Therefore, you should follow them. You should ascend the throne and rule piously. That is real happiness. And Prabhupada in another lecture says that we see the same theme in other of Krishna's pure devotees, like Maharaj Priyavrata. He did not want to become a king, but just to fulfill the desire of Krishna, he becomes the king. We see that in Maharaj Chitraketu also, where he accepts the position of being Vritasur just in order to glorify the position of Krishna's devotees. So this also addresses Yudhishthir's concern of destruction of society. So his concern was that I have killed so many people. And Bhishma is saying that if you don't protect, more people will be killed, because an unprotected society will turn on one another. The strong will feast on the weak, and there will be mayhem. So now you should take the position of being Natha Anathan, being the protector of the society. Okay, next verse, 1980. Esha vai Bhagavan Sakshat Adya Narayana Puman Moyan Mayaya Lokam Gudascharati Vrishnishu. This Krishna is no other than the inconceivable original personality of Godhead. He is the first Narayan, the supreme enjoyer. He is moving amongst the descendants of King Vrishni, just like one of us. And he is bewildering us with his self-created energy. So now Yudhishthira is turning his attention to Krishna. So initially, he talked about the Pandavas. And specifically, he has addressed all the concerns of Yudhishthira. In addressing the concern, he has linked them to Krishna. He has glorified. He has glorified the position of the Pandavas as being the recipient of the mercy of Krishna. And now he is turning to what is close to his heart, which is the glorification of Krishna. And you will see that he segues gradually into it. So he is talking about the Pandavas, then he's talking about Krishna and the Pandavas. And then he will talk about Krishna only. So he's talking about Krishna and the Pandavas. So he's saying Krishna is Bhagwan Sakshat. So he's not an expansion, not an incarnation. He is Bhagwan Sakshat. He is Swayam Bhagwan. He is the Adya Narayana. So he is the Adya, means the original. Adi Purusham. Adya Narayana is the original Narayana. Because Lord Narayana is an expansion of Krishna. So he's saying he is who from him Lord Narayana comes. Bhagwan Sakshat. And he is Puman, the supreme enjoyer. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada says, Bhishma Dev is confirmed. Bhishma Dev is one of the 12 Mahajans who know the principles of transcendental knowledge. His confirmation of Lord Shri Krishna, being the original personality of Godhead, is also corroborated by the impersonalist Shankara. All other acharyas have also confirmed this statement, and thus there is no chance of not accepting Lord Shri Krishna as the original personality of Godhead. Bhishma says that he is the first Narayan. This is also confirmed by Brahmaji in Bhagavatam 10:14-14. Lord Brahma says, Narayanas Tvam. So, Bhishma Dev is instructing the Pandavas and Yudhishthir that he is God. So, what you need to do is simply follow his instructions. So, when Bhishma points to Krishna and says that he is God, then Yudhishthir or the Pandavas might say that now is a good chance for us to do away with all this inconceivability stuff. So there is Krishna standing in the chariot. Let's catch hold of him and let's ask him, why is he doing all this? Because Krishna is present right there. And Bhishma is saying that even though Krishna is present right there, even now he is bewildering you. He's Gudhas. Even now he is inconceivable. He is Moyan Mayaya Lokam. That by his own energy, Mayaya, he is bewildering the entire world. And Yudhishthira may say, how so? He's standing over here, how so is he bewildering the entire world? So Bhishma says, Charati Vrishneshu. That he's moving about the Vrishnis just like a regular person. And he's hiding his actual position from everybody, including you. So does that not make him inconceivable? So the purport again, Bhishma is saying is, whether you are now, most of us will not have that privilege of being directly in the presence of Krishna. But what Bhishma is saying is, whether you're directly in the presence of Krishna or not, he is always inconceivable. So your perfection is in following the instructions of Krishna. So he's building that. He's already established that foundation, but he's solidifying it. That Krishna is God. You can never understand Krishna. The perfection of your life is following the instructions of Krishna. Therefore, Yudhishthir, you should ascend to the throne. Okay, next verse. Ashyano bhavam bhagavan vedaguyata mam shivaha devarishi narada sakshat bhagavan kapila nrpa. O king, Lord Shiva, Narad, the sage among the demigods, and Kapil, the incarnation of Godhead, all know very confidentially about his glories through direct contact. So Arjun might ask that, does anybody know Krishna? You keep saying is inconceivable, then is he inconceivable to everybody? And Bhishma says, not really. And again, this is a verse that requires a fair amount of churning, as we can see from Prabhupada's purport. Just to understand Prabhupada's purport takes a long time. So the verse is what I call a sleeper verse. It looks like it's very simple, but lot of philosophy embedded in it. So Bhishma is saying, not really. There are people who understand. And Bhishma himself, being a Mahajan, he names 3 other Mahajans. He names Shiva, Narad, and Kapila. So Prabhupada in the purport says there are 12 Mahajans. He gives the name of the 12 Mahajans. And he says that Bhishma is referring to the other Mahajans. So in a way, what Bhishma is doing here is what Arjun did in the 10th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, that after he himself is factually convinced about Krishna's divinity, he declares it, but then he says, don't just take my word for it. it is corroborated by the words of other great personalities. So, and this is 10th chapter, verses 12, and the 3-4 verses after the 12th verse, where he says, you are supreme, and Narad and Asit and Deval have confirmed it, now you're confirming it. So Bhishma Dev is doing something very similar. In the previous verse, he had said that Krishna is Shakshat Bhagwan. In this verse, he is saying that these 3 exalted Mahajans, Narad Muni and Bhagwan Kapila and Lord Shiva, all great personalities, they also accept that. So one must not, or Bhishma is saying that you must not doubt the divinity of Krishna. Now this is where some layers come in. So one may ask that Arjun was in a different situation, that he did not, or at least in the past time, he did not know that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And when Krishna reveals, then he's happy about it. That yes, my friend is the personality of Godhead. But these personalities, Narad and Kapil and Shiva, they have no question about Krishna's divinity. So what is it that they know confidentially? So the acharyas say that what Bhishma is pointing to the fact is that the statement that he made in 1917, that all this is within the plan of the God and Krishna, and you must follow it. So Yudhishthira may question, how can we understand that the Lord, who is the well-wisher of everyone, can be the cause of suffering? So Bhishma is saying is, this Guyam, this secret is known to some extent by these personalities. That how can the Sarva Surat, who is the well-wisher of everyone, actually be the cause of suffering? So both Srila Prabhupada and Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, they have a fairly, what I would consider to be an esoteric explanation to this. And so I'm going to try my best to explain it to the level that I understood it, and then we can have discussions on it. So Srila Prabhupada talks about the Anubhavam. And so Bhishma Dev says Asya Anubhavam Bhagavan. So Anubhavam is translated as glories, but there is another meaning of Anubhav. Does anybody know what is the other meaning of Anubhav?
Experience.
I'm looking for a more specific. I mean, it's a definitional meaning of Anubhav.
Great bhavam, feeling, I guess.
Anybody else? So in the Nectar of Devotion, there are levels of bhakti that are shown. So there is bhav, there is anubhav, and then there is mahabhav. So when Bhishma is talking about asya anubhavam Bhagwan, so he is not talking about, or in addition to talking about the glories of Krishna, he is also talking about the anubhav of Krishna. So as I mentioned, there are 3 stages of development in devotional service, and the first is bhav, which is also called sthai bhav. Sthai bhav is the steady state, the the platform on which one executes bhakti. Then Anubhav is the result of Udipan, that you're executing bhakti, and then somebody, or you're chanting, and you hear Srila Prabhupada chanting, and then suddenly your chanting becomes ecstatic. Or you're standing in front of the deities, and somebody is playing a beautiful kirtan, and then suddenly there is a surge of emotions in you. These are mild forms of Anubhav. Anubhav are actually much stronger than that. Prabhupada says Anubhav, they manifest as paralysis, perspiration, tears, horripilation, hair standing on the head. So they're short but concentrated and extreme manifestation of bhav. And then there is the third stage, Mahabhav, which is beyond the reach of jivas, but which is manifested in Srimati Radharani, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So typically speaking, the Anubhav is used to refer to the devotees. That they have a certain Sthaibhav, based on that, based on an Udipan or a trigger, they experience a Anubhav. In this verse, however, Bhishma is using Anubhav to refer to Krishna. So Vishnu Chakra Thakur explains that when Krishna is being tied to the motor by Yashoda Mai, or when he becomes a charioteer of Arjun, he is experiencing Anubhav. And the Anubhav that he is experiencing is out of this feeling of dependence on his devotees. So Krishna is supremely independent. He does not have this experience of dependence. But when he sees so much love, prema, coming from his devotees, then the Anubhav of dependence manifests on him. So he takes a subservient position to them. Subservient means that you are dependent. So that which melts the hearts of both Vishaya and Ashraya is prema. So it is prema bhakti that while it is melting the heart of the performer, it is also melting the heart of the Ashraya. It is also melting the heart of Krishna. And when this prema becomes intensified, then the Anubhav that manifests in Krishna is that of dependence. And when the devotees see this Anubhav in Krishna, they also experience Anubhav more. So in response to Krishna's dependence on them, their love also increases. When Yashoda Mai is tying Krishna, when she sees Krishna in this position, that he is fearful, he is scared, then her love for him also increases. And in this way, the cycle between the Lord and the devotee feed on one another. So we see this example. Krishna does that sometimes in Vraj Leela. We see that when the Kaliya Daman pastime was happening, then Krishna purposefully, he allowed himself to be captured by the Kaliya snake. And why did he do that? So that the feeling of anxiety, it distilled or it concentrated the love in his devotees. And when he saw that love in his devotees, then his own love became even more stronger. And then he does his famous dance on the hoods of Kaliya serpent. We see that in Ras Leela, that when Krishna is with the gopis and he disappears, then he sees that how the gopis, they're madly running after him. And when he sees that strong love, then he himself is drawn and he comes in. And after these emotions have been concentrated both in Krishna and the gopis, then the Maharas happens. So far, it's a little complex, but it's understandable. Now comes the more puzzling part. One of the ways in which Krishna expresses his Anubhav is by putting his devotees into difficulties. So when Krishna is feeling, so translated differently, when Krishna is feeling a lot of love for his devotee, he puts them into difficulty. So if you speak this to somebody who is not anchored into Krishna consciousness, they will say that let me keep on looking for some other ways to practice my devotion. I really don't want to surrender to a God who, when he's feeling happy, puts you into difficulty. The child comes to the father, the child looks really cute, and he says, Papa, the father slaps him. Right? So that is where, to some extent, the leap of faith is there. Prabhupada explains this to some extent. He says, tribulations imposed upon the devotees by the Lord constitute another exchange of transcendental bhav between the Lord and the devotee. The Lord says, I put my devotees into difficulty, and thus the devotee becomes more purified in exchanging transcendental bhav with me. So now we see that this difficulty is not an end in itself. It's just a means to an end, and the end is glorious. The end is that when Krishna puts his devotees into difficulty, then driven by that difficulty, they even take more shelter. They associate even more closely with Krishna. When the residents of Vrindavan, their Sthai Bhav was of strong affection towards Krishna. But when Krishna put them into difficulty, in this case, he put them into difficulty by putting himself into difficulty. But essentially, he was torturing them. Mother Yashoda, she was becoming unconscious. She would come back and become unconscious again. And Nand Baba, he was almost ready to give up his life. He was being forcibly held back by the other Gopas because he wanted to jump into the water to rescue Krishna. So Krishna is putting them into all this difficulty, but the end is glorious because Krishna then comes to them. And then their love was 1,000,000 times over than what it normally is. So the difficulties the devotees are put into is not prarabdha, because they're put by the Lord alone, who wants to benefit the devotees. Now comes a little bit of relief for us. Prabhupada and Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, however, this is not an inclusive rule. Sometimes the Lord increases his devotees' bhaktis without giving problems to them. So what they are saying is, don't think that there is only one way that Krishna will inspire you to perform more devotion. There are times when Krishna actually increased the bhakti without putting the devotees into difficulty. Now, before that, one thing we have to understand is, Krishna only puts the devotees into that kind of difficulty that will increase their devotion. He will not put them into that kind of difficulty that will break the devotion. So we are practicing devotees, and one day we come back from home, our house is gone, our family is gone, and we have no money. Very unlikely our devotion to Krishna will increase. We will get materially bewildered. We will start, we will start looking for material shelters. Krishna will not do that, because that's not the purpose of his doing. So he clearly is saying, I do that because by doing so, the devotion of my devotee increases. So he knows our abilities, and according to that, he coaxes us. So Prabhupada gives the example of two cases where Krishna actually increased the bhakti without putting them into any trials and tribulations. One is the case of the 4 Kumaras. The 4 Kumaras were in Shantaras, or they were mostly impersonalists, but Krishna unconditionally, he gave his mercy. By smelling the tulsi leaf on his lotus feet, they became staunch devotees of Krishna. They didn't go through any trials and tribulations. Same thing with Sukadeva Goswami. Sukadeva Goswami was an impersonalist, but through the agency of Vyasadeva, he heard the glorification of Krishna, and he became a personalist. He became a devotee. So Bhishma says that Shiva and Narad know this. So the point that he's making is that knowing, now we can also say now that we kind of know this, so we are like Shiva and Narad, but that's not what he's saying. What he's saying is that knowing when is Krishna doing what, that Krishna, that Shiva and Narad knows. When is Krishna, when is a person being put into difficulty because of prarabdha karma? When is a person being put into difficulty because of Krishna karma? When is he being put into difficulty because of anubhav? They know it, but he also says that they know it to some extent. That they may know the actions, but they will never know, even they will not know the real intentions of Krishna. They only know what Krishna reveals to them, as we know what Krishna and Guru and Sadhu reveals to us. So Bhishma is thus confirming that Yudhishthira that he has been put into difficulty by Krishna only. So Bhishma is making a bold statement now. He's saying that actually you should consider this to be the mercy of Krishna. So earlier on he was saying that Krishna was using you for his own purpose, which itself is glorious. But Yudhishthira might say that, I was happily in the spiritual world doing my service. Krishna pulled me out, and just for his own service, he put me into so much trials and tribulations. So Bhishma now says is more than that. Krishna picked you because he was specially merciful on you. So in order to reciprocate with Krishna's mercy, you need to follow his instructions and do whatever he desires of you to do. Okay, so I think I'll stop over here. This is a kind of a complex verse, and I leave the rest of the time to any. I'm not sure if we were scheduled for an hour or an hour and a half. In case it's an hour, I've already taken the hour. But what do the devotees want? If there's any Q&A on this verse, we can any discussion on this, we can do it.
Prabhuji, one question. So like, we discussed that, about the three causes of suffering for devotees, and is it important is it important to know that, this particular suffering is because of prarabdha karma, this is because of, Krishna karma, or this is because of why the Lord wants it, and if so, like, how can we segregate our suffering into these categories?
So thank you. It's a good question. So the reason that it's being put over here is because it's considered to be pertinent to us, and difficulties is one of the reasons why people take to Krishna. It is also one of the reasons why people leave the shelter of Krishna. That when they're put into difficulties, then they start questioning. They start questioning about the potency of bhakti, about the quality of mercy that Krishna has. So it is for this reason that Bhishma Dev using this example of the Pandavas is trying to bring forth the various causes of suffering. So from a more experiential basis, next time when we have some suffering, then at least in our mind, so we know that we don't fall in the third category. So we are not being used by Krishna for his Leela. So both the first and the second category, understanding both of them will give us some kind of, it'll help us develop a resolve in continuing with the process. So if you consider that it is just prarabdha karma, then you say, okay. Prabhupada would say, when you suffer, then you just be happy. that some of your prarabdha karma has been burnt away, less for you to worry about. So that is good. Or if we consider, if you're more spiritually equibalanced, or if we consider that yes, this is some of a prarabdha karma that Krishna has given to us. Prabhupada would say that we were going to get a large reaction. Krishna has given us a token reaction. In that token reaction, Krishna has burned away that large reaction, and he has given us a lesson to learn that we can use to make progress. So by applying this sense of discrimination, we can use something that is a powerful obstruction to our devotional service as actually a catalyst to our devotional service. The second part of your question was that how do we distinguish between them? And I think to some extent that has been the purport of all the verses that we are speaking, that you cannot. That when personalities like Lord Shiv and Kapil, they are limited in their ability to distinguish. We know for certain that we cannot. So the message for us is that rather than meditating too much on does this fall in category 1 or 2 or 3, if you meditate more so on what is the lesson in it for us and act upon it, that is a practical way for us to implement these teachings. That's what Bhishma is asking Yudhishthira to do. While he's explaining all this to him, he keeps saying that don't worry about it. And the reason I'm explaining all this to you is to impress upon you that it is very difficult to understand. So I'm just giving you a hint of all that is going on. But the purport of all that I'm telling you is that in all situations, try and find out what are the desires of Krishna and act upon.
Yeah, thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you.
Prabhuji, one comment and a question, Prabhu. The comment is like, it actually, when we have this understanding, it kind of gives a relief. Whenever there is something is happening, either even like you said, if we think it is prarabdha karma, still we get the relief that okay, like that. And even if it is, if we think probably Krishna is playing with me, kind of, that also Krishna is directly interacting with me is kind of, it takes us out of the game we are in, that whatever difficulty thing. So that is also is very relieving in sense.
Right. And to a great extent, that is the purpose why this has been put in, because if you are able to internalize that, then you're right. It gives us relief and it increases our conviction.
And question, Prabhuji, like just I have the understanding, like correct me if I am wrong, Anubhav is always a bhava which is depending on the other person. Like in this case, Krishna, or for Krishna's case also it is as, so it is always any bhava that is depending on the other person to.
Not necessarily. So the Nectar of Devotion talks, I would recommend you read that. It talks a lot about the Udipan to Anubhav. The trigger could be external, but Rupa Goswami also gives the example of like Yashodamai, she's moving about in the house and then she sees some article of Krishna there and milk starts flowing from her breast. So that's the Udipan. That in that case, it is external. She sees an object related to Krishna. But there are some times when she's just sitting and she thinks about Krishna. And then she starts displaying the symptoms of Anubhav. So there's no external trigger. It just comes within, but there is some trigger.
And if it is internal, it could be the same example can be a Mahabhav also. Like how if it is internal, we can distinguish. Like the pastime just now example.
So again, I would recommend that, I mean, if you have all these questions, you should read the Nectar of Devotion. It is explained very elaborately over there. Any other questions, comments? Is it okay then if I do one more verse?
Yes, Ruji. So there is another class that will be starting in 15 minutes. That is
Okay.
on Zoom.
So is it okay I do another verse?
Yes, Ruji.
Okay. So we'll do 1920. Yam mannase matuleyam priyam mitram suhurtamam akraha sachivam dutam sordad tatha sartham. O king, that personality whom out of ignorance only you thought to be a maternal cousin, your very dear friend, well-wisher, counselor, messenger, benefactor, etc., is that very personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. So this verse develops on the Guhyam theme that Bhishma he introduced in the previous verse. So he made the point that Krishna's activities and his intentions, they're very confidential. They're very difficult to discern. So here he's saying that this is the person that you were considering to be all these things, to be your maternal cousin, to be a counselor, messenger, so etc., etc. But did you ever know that he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead? This is how Guhyam he is. This is how secretive or confidential his activities and intentions is. So when so this is one aspect of understanding this verse. This verse also talks about the anubhav that Bhishma had spoken about in the previous verse. So he had mentioned that or he had not really mentioned, but Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur had mentioned, and that was with his eye on this verse, that when Krishna is experiencing intense love towards his devotion, towards his devotees, then one of the manifestations of that anubhav is that Krishna leaves his natural quality of being supremely independent and becomes dependent. So here Bhishma is saying that see how Krishna has become dependent on you. That he is your cousin, he is your dear friend, your messenger, your benefactor. Now in all this Krishna is giving, but it also is a symptom of his dependence. That one is benefiting somebody because one is getting something back. Maybe not in kind, but just the feeling of happiness, or the feeling of, in this case, in case of Krishna, it is the partiality. Krishna is partial to the Pandavas because he is experiencing the love and devotion from them. So what Bhishma is trying to tell Yudhishthir, that I in the last verse, he may not say it in these words, but I'm saying it to explain that in the last verse, I told you that when Krishna is extremely affectionate towards his devotees, the Anubhav manifests as his dependence on them. Now, in this verse, I'm telling you, giving you the examples of how Krishna is dependent on you. Now, I also told you that one of the symptoms of Krishna's Anubhav is that he puts his devotees into difficulty. So now you can understand that that this difficulty that you're being put into is a symptom of Krishna's Anubhav. So this is a symptom of Krishna's intense love for you. So Bhishma here is putting everything all right to Yudhishthir. He's saying you have been put into difficulty, but this difficulty is coming because it is a symptom of Krishna's intense love for you. And I can prove that Krishna has intense love for you because another symptom of Krishna's intense love is that he becomes dependent. And these are the examples that demonstrate Krishna's dependence on you. So Prabhupada in the purport, he says, Lord Shri Krishna, although acting as the cousin, brother, friend, well-wisher, counselor, messenger, benefactor, etc. of the Pandavas, was still the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Out of his causeless mercy and favor upon his unalloyed devotees, he performs all kinds of services, but that does not mean that he has changed his position as the absolute person. To think of him as an ordinary man is the grossest type of ignorance. So, both the points are being made by Srila Prabhupada. The Krishna, out of his mercy, Anubhav, is interacting with the Pandavas in all these ways, but Krishna is still God. So you should always have that deference towards Krishna. You should not think that Krishna is my charioteer. I am the one who should give Krishna orders, but not the other way around. If Krishna has that bhav of being my charioteer, I should take the bhav of being Krishna's Lord and Master. So I should keep giving Krishna's instructions and not accept anything in return. So Prabhupada is saying that regardless of the interaction Krishna is having, Krishna is always God. And one who does not understand it is in the grossest form of ignorance. Now, this is not going to happen in Yudhishthira or Pandavas because for obvious reasons, when Krishna is experiencing Anubhav because of love of his devotee, the devotee is an exalted devotee. He can never fall into any misconceptions about Krishna's position. But Prabhupada is making this point for our benefit, that we should not think that, just because we have become devotees, then we are automatically at the position of giving orders to Krishna. At all points, Krishna is God and we are his servant. Another point Bhishma is making to Yudhishthira is, do not lament. You may have suffered a lot in the past. Now also, you are in anxiety. But consider how fortunate you are. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is your relative, friend, well-wisher, counselor, messenger, benefactor, etc. So, everything that is good ends up good regardless of how it is in between. So you may have suffered, etc., but all of that is coming from the fact that Krishna is your well-wisher, and wherever there is Krishna, there will be all auspiciousness. So you can rest assured that in all your future endeavors, there will be all auspiciousness. So he's asking Yudhishthira not to be concerned about his own qualifications to rule the kingdom, because he already has received the mercy of Krishna, and that will continue to be with him in his future endeavors. Okay, so We have a few minutes. I'll stop here and see if there's any questions or comments.
Prabhu, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Nanda Gopal Das. The Anubhav that you're explaining about Krishna putting this devotees into difficulty to experience that Anubhav. Is it also under Bhishma Dev is telling that out of ignorance you are thinking him as your maternal cousin, but he is not. He is Supreme Personality of Godhead. I was also thinking that isn't it true that Krishna also, in order to experience that Anubhav, puts his devotees into Yogamaya covering, so that that can be explained as a ignorance under the Yogamaya covering, which Bhishma Dev is trying to dispel.
It's a good question, Prabhu. So the premise that you're making is absolutely correct. That yes, that in order to experience greater stirrings, Krishna does put his devotees under Yogmaya and in ignorance. However, at this point, Bhishma is addressing Yudhishthir from a more materialistic perspective, because Yudhishthir is at a point where he is like, should I rule or not rule? So that's the ignorance that Bhishma is talking about. He's not talking about the ignorance that comes as a result of Yogmaya. At least at this particular stage, he's talking about fact. That's why Prabhupada says that if one thinks of Krishna as an ordinary man, that person is in ignorance. So it's not that Yudhishthira is thinking like that, but Bhishma is warning him of that mentality. That just because the Lord is your this, don't think of him as an ordinary man. That will be a sign of ignorance. Now, while saying that, he's also making the more subtle point that Krishna is your friend, messenger, etc., because he's reacting to your pure bhakti. That is his anubhav, that he has made himself dependent on you. So you can rest assured that Krishna is your ever well-wisher, and that is why you should not worry about any. You should not have any trepidation in following through with the desires of Krishna. I'm not sure, Prabhu, if that addresses your question.
Yes, Prabhu. Yes, sure. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. So I think we have a hard stop at 30. Achyuta says that there's another class that starts at 8:30. It's 8:29. So I wanted to thank all of you for giving me this opportunity to associate with you on this auspicious day of Nirjala Ekadashi. I hope it's going well for all of you, and I look forward to being with you again on Monday. Hare Krishna. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya vacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namah. Anant Koti Vaishnavrinda ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Nitai Gaur Premanande. Hari Hari Bol. Hare Krishna.